I don't think the game's over.
Not done. We don't want to give up.
I don't think the game's over until...
Not done until the clock says 0. We don't want to give up to the clock says 0.
I don't think the game's over until triple zeros on the clock, triple zeros on the clock, triple zeros on the clock.
That's right. Welcome into a very, very, very late edition of Triple Zeros, but the show must go on. So we're going to get right into it and start breaking down some of the NFL action for Week 6, some NFL preseason hype, talk about some extracurriculars going on in the NBA right now. Let's say NFL preseason, NBA preseason hype, some extracurriculars going on in the NBA, and then some troubling news about welterweight champion Errol Spence having a car accident. Got some video footage of that. It's a little disturbing, but like I said, we're going to get right into it. Late night, man. Filming issues, had to figure out a place. As you can see, the scenery has changed. I like the spot. They might have to make the spot permanent. Who knows? We'll see. But first up, NFL Week 6 storylines. The first and foremost, we have two undefeated teams still. The New England Patriots, who actually ended up winning their game. So this first question, we already know the Pats will remain undefeated this weekend so far. But the 49ers take on the Los Angeles Rams in a game that will be taking place in Los Angeles. That's one to keep an eye on because the Rams will be without Todd Gurley. That was just announced earlier that he would at first be a game time decision, but now it seems as though he'll be sitting. This game is in Los Angeles, but the 4-0 Niners, the upstart, out of nowhere. I guess it's not really out of nowhere. They've been building up for quite a while. They got like 4 first-round picks on that defensive line, paid a lot of money for Jimmy Garoppolo, who's kind of just been I don't want to say a passenger, but he's been a game manager more than he has been a playmaker. But he's been timeless, so I don't even want to say that. That's not even really accurate. But he's just it's funny. It's really like Mike Shanahan all over again with Kyle Shanahan's offense. They got 3 running backs who can take the ball and get you 100 yards in any given game on limited touches. They all share touches. In the last game, they had 2 guys to go over 100. Tevin Coleman, or he came close. Tevin Coleman at 97 yards, I believe. And Matt Breida had over 100 on like 15 touches. It's crazy what they have going on with the Shanahans do with running backs, with any running back. I'm pretty sure I can get back there and get about 500 yards right now if a Shanahan was to pick me up and put me in. But the Rams, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how they get along. That offense, Goff's going to have to throw a lot. The Niners defense has been kind of ferocious, though, getting after quarterbacks lately. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. That's one that I'm definitely keeping an eye on. The Niners trying to keep that undefeated streak going on right along with the Patriots, who, like I said, already got their victory on against the New York Giants. Daniel Jones had to go out there with nobody. He was without Sterling Shepard. He was without Evan Ingram. We already know Saquon Barkley is out. But then Barkley's backup, Wayne Gallman, was also out. Daniel Jones was out there. Bless his heart. Bless his heart. He was taking some risks. He takes a lot of risks with his throws, forcing them in the pass, in the coverage. I guess it's kind of how it is when you know that you can afford to make those kind of mistakes. Eli Manning is on the bench and doesn't really make sense to pull him unless Jones is just having one of those really awful days where the coach is more or less sitting him down to, save him and just go ahead and wash us away from your memory banks. But other than that, he can go out there and do what he needs to do or just, sling it with no repercussions. So I don't really blame him, but they just couldn't do much. Fell to the New England Patriots 35-14 on Thursday night. Like I said, just an undermanned team. But for about 3/4 of that game, it was pretty tight. And one could wonder if this is going to be something new. I mean, Brady won't be around for forever, will he? 50? If he plays these about 50, then you can see this for a few years. But it was 21-14 until the 4th quarter when the Patriots scored 14 more points. So, it was a defensive game. Brady threw a pick. Did he throw 1 or 2 picks? I'm sorry. He threw 1 pick. That's what I thought. 3 sacks. It just looked flustered. The defense tried to step up their game. It just was too much. The Patriots eventually overcame it. They let you hang around, and then the dam breaks, and you get drowned out. Sonny Michel, 22 carries, 86 yards. He lost some touches to Brandon Bolden in key moments there. Bolden ended up getting a touchdown. He only had 3 rushes for 23 yards, but he just seemed to be, like I said, when in a very key situation when the game was tight, the Patriots went to him and got the touchdown to go up. Julian Edelman 9 catches, 113 yards. The Patriots just keep finding a way. That's what's so odd about these two undefeated teams right now is that they're one is the out of nowhere because it's just a bunch of parts that we don't know how they all fit together in the 49ers. And then the other one is the Patriots, where you know how good they are, but you know how different they are than past iterations. You just wonder how long can they keep this run up? And it just seems to just keep going. Now, mind you, their schedule hasn't been the toughest so far, but you can only play who's on your schedule, so you can't really hold that against them. And they're doing things. That defense is doing things that are ridiculous. I think that was the first game they allowed more than 6 points or something like that this season. They've been dominant over the first 5-6 games, and that's the scary part is that, when the Patriots have been at their best is when the defense has been able to create the timely turnovers and shut down the opponent running game. Bill Belichick is a master at scheming away the opposing team's best player. If you can do that and still play great defense everywhere else as well, with the offense, Tom Brady gets the ball multiple times to figure out your defense. It's hard not to chalk them in for another Super Bowl appearance, at least right now as things stand. The next matchup that has some intrigue to me, the Texans and the Chiefs. Now, this one's multi-layered. Now, first of all, you have the Chiefs, who are also coming into this game as one of the 4-1 teams. They lost last week to the Indianapolis Colts. Patrick Mahomes struggled against that man-to-man coverage. Justin Houston apparently let everybody know that the receivers don't like it. We'll have to see if they'll get Tyreek Hill back this week. He's said that he'll be testing his shoulder out pregame. That's something to keep an eye on. But as it stands, it's just a shootout waiting to happen. The Houston Texans went absolutely off last week when they dismantled. And I'm being facetious here, but not really, because Deshaun Watson had 5 touchdowns. If I could get that one out, had to pull up the stats real quick. Deshaun Watson had 5 touchdown passes against the Atlanta Falcons, went 28 of 33. He was 84% completion. Okay. So I'm sorry, I said overstate. It's an understatement telling you what the Houston Texans did. They torched him. Will Fuller went off. He had 14 catches. I'm tired, man. It's late. 14 catches, 217 yards. Patrick Mahomes, we already know he has yet to throw an interception this season, despite having the poor showing last game. The Chiefs are just. This is another one of those situations where you've seen the blueprint on how to slow them down, and now every team is going to be trying to replicate that and pull it forward. You just wonder if the Texans can do so. They've had a sieve of a defense at times. Atlanta still scored 32 points. Matt Ryan did. This is the Chiefs now. They're going up against Patrick Mahomes, leader in the house for MVP again. This has shootout written all over it. We'll see if the Texans can even try to match up. Hopefully, we'll get to see Tyreek Hill. If not, that'll aid the Texans in what they're trying to do in shutting down Patrick Mahomes, J.J. Watt and company, trying to get at them. 3-2 Texans, 4-1 Chiefs. It's in Arrowhead, so that's going for the Chiefs' favor. But like I said, man. And then on another level, you got 2 older running backs, two guys who were discarded on the trash heap, as it were, from their previous teams. LaShawn McCoy for the Chiefs was with the Buffalo Bills to start the season, and Carlos Hyde from the Browns via the Jacksonville Jaguars for a brief stint there. Both of these guys are actually doing some things. Hyde actually is leading the team in carries and has been seeing quite the resurgence. 73 yards, 73 attempts, 310 yards. I am tired, y'all. I'm sorry. I am tired. LaShawn McCoy for the Chiefs, 40 attempts, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns. They're both doing great things in good offenses, and that just goes to show you that maybe they're casting these running backs aside a little bit too quickly because, it's cheaper to get a rookie out of there. It seems like running backs can only be valuable in 2 points when they're on their rookie deal and when they're on those veteran minimums. But McCoy hasn't been getting the Chiefs seem to force Damian Williams some touches last game when he just doesn't seem to have that quickness, that explosiveness that he needs to get away from anybody. Now, he was still valuable in the passing game, but LaShawn McCoy should probably be getting more carries, and hopefully we'll see that going forward. But that's something to keep an eye on because it's one of those things where it's like maybe they were just trying to get Williams back. Remember, he'd missed a lot of time with a knee injury. Maybe they were just trying to get him back into game shape, or who knows. But McCoy clearly looks like the better back in that system right now. So if I had my picking, which I definitely do not, I would say that it'd be McCoy. But like again, that's a pair of great storylines to look at. The two quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, and the two running backs in Carlos Hyde and LaShawn McCoy. Another matchup, the Super Bowl. That's right, folks. We got the winless teams. The Washington Redskins will be in Miami to take on the winless Dolphins in what could clearly be vying for second place. I'm not sure anybody really wants to win this game, first and foremost. The Redskins have said that they will not be starting Dwayne Haskins. The Dolphins have no choice but to start Josh Rosen at this point in time. This is an ugly game. This is, like I said, the battle for first pick in the NFL draft coming up. And if I had to pick a winner, it'd be the Redskins, just because the Dolphins traded away their talent. The Redskins are still holding on to some of theirs, as it were, even though their best player, Trent Williams, is not there right now. They're still holding on to – they still have a better roster, I think, top to bottom than the Dolphins currently. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. And it really begs the question if the Jets and the Bengals can remain winless up until Week 13 when they'll play each other. And there's some other matchups, here and there. But I fully expect the Bengals to lose to the Ravens, and I fully expect the Jets to lose to the Cowboys. The Cowboys especially should be upset with how they played recently, and should be looking to take it out on the Jets, who are expecting to get Sam Darnold back. They released Luke Falk with Darnold returning from having mono and his swollen spleen and not wanting to die if he were to get hit on the field. One of the other more intriguing matchups is the Eagles and the Vikings. This matchup pits two teams who are vying for top spots in their division. They're both in second right now. The Eagles trailing the Cowboys and the Vikings trailing the Packers. 3-2 squads. The Eagles have one of the league's top run defenses, and the Vikings have had one of the top rushing offenses. Vikings have fallen off a little bit recently with the Bears. Bear down, little homerism. But they found their way against the Giants last week before the Giants lost to the Patriots. And this will be one to see again. The Vikings want to be a running team. The Eagles want to shut down the run. So the Vikings are going to have to go to the air, something that the receivers have been clamoring for, we know, and something that the Vikings actually paid Kirk Cousins to do. So this will be a game for him to earn that keep. If there's a secondary that he should be able to thrive against, it should be this one. But that pass rush is ferocious, and we know that his offensive line has not been exactly stellar for the entire season when tasked with blocking for him for extended periods of time. So that'll be one to keep an eye on for personal reasons and for intrigue. It'll be one to watch. I just think it'll be fun to see. And then the Eagles, and they're beat up a little bit on the offensive side, but we'll see how they can fare against that vaunted Vikings defense. That should be an interesting battle as well. Carson Wentz trying to regain or earn some of the favor that Nick Foles has built up over the past few years, just get the team to the playoffs. Right now they're trying to battle back from second place in the NFC East. The Lions and the Packers, this is another game that has more intrigue here with the Chicago Bears being on a bye. Two division opponents that will be beating up on each other. You want to see the Lions take a bite out of the Packers, but then you think about the Lions winning and the Bears are further in the basement with how they're sitting right now. The Packers are, like I said, leading the NFC North at 4-1. The Lions are 2-1-1. They had that tie with the Arizona Cardinals a couple of weeks ago. They'll be looking to regain their footing. They're a much improved team, much more improved than I had given them credit for initially prior to the season beginning, especially on the defensive side, and the offense just keeps humming. I'm not surprised. Matthew Stafford is a highly underrated, in my opinion, highly underrated quarterback. People want to give him grief for the lack of winning there, but they've put a lot on him, and the support has been varying in what it's been good at, and it's rarely been a complete team. So if they found something good for them, just hopefully it's not too good for them. Again, getting a little personal, that's fine. We're doing what we're doing. But that brings us to the team that I covered for Last Word on Pro Football, the Chicago Bears. Wrote about them a two-part series for their bye week, the Bears bye week breakdown. First, I covered the defense and just some quick grades. The defensive line I gave an A-. they could do better with getting some pressure. We've seen teams take them out with quick passing game, which is going to get the best, obviously, which I think they are as a group. But I would like to see them also hold up a little bit better against the run. That is something that I think which can be aided by their teammates behind them, but we'll get to that in a second. I think that they have some moments where they've let up late in games. Now, that could be, again, a result of what's going on in the action behind them, but that's just if they're being nitpicky, not wanting to give anybody too great of a grade with how the team is sitting right now. I think that's where they can improve upon, is sometimes they take some run plays off, or you would just like to see some of the pass rush get home a little bit more to somebody other than Khalil Mack and the interior guys like, Leonard Floyd. You showed us 2 sacks. How about you have that breakout year that we were all anticipating in a contract season? Or really anybody other than Khalil Mack, another consistent pass rusher on the outside to apply pressure and get some of those blocks off of him, getting him off the field in important down and distance in the red zone. He's out of the game because he's been getting triple teamed, or out of the game because he's been getting triple teamed the entire way down the field. That's something I think they could help themselves with. The linebackers I gave a B. We saw them have some trouble with the Raiders' game plan, Roquan Smith in particular. That's something that maybe that's got to do with why he was out. Who knows? Going forward, we'll see how they bounce back, coming back week 7, when they take on the New Orleans Saints. But this is where I graded Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd. Actually, I gave the grade a B. I think that Floyd needs to step his game up, and while he's a nice all-around player, what they need is some more pressure on the quarterback consistently. Now he's always around the ball, so I don't want to act like as if he's not getting sacked. So I think he's a bad player. I just feel like there's another level that he could take his game to that we haven't seen him do consistently. We've seen him flash it, and he's had those splash plays or splash games even, but consistent. Maybe it's a motor thing, but consistent efforts, those flashes consistently would be a godsend for this team that's defense that's on the field often, a lot of the times, because the offense can't sustain its own drives. But we'll get to that in a moment as well. The secondary, I gave a C+. The corners are having some troubles. Kyle Fuller and Prince Amukamara. Amukamara is having issues with allowing completion, 75% completion percentage, and Kyle Fuller has had some double moves eating them up. Both of them have not graded great in Pro Football Focus. Now we all know that Pro Football Focus is not necessarily the end all be all, but is a relatable metric to show you the level of performance for each of these players. And right now, neither one of them are performing great. Now, the safety tandem of Eddie Jackson and HaHa Clinton Dix, in my opinion, has been great. Jackson hasn't had the turnovers coming his way yet. He's been around the ball. He had a recovered fumble. He hasn't forced any takeaways, but he is 5th on the team in tackles. But HaHa Clinton Dix, this is the one that's really surprised me. Now, when he was signed, we were told about his poor tackling. Well, right now he's 3rd on the team in tackles. We were told that he wouldn't be as good as Adrian Amos. He's got 2 of the team's 4 interceptions, which is another thing that we'll get to in a second, because the turnovers have come by way of fumbles, not necessarily picks, but they've been around the ball. They've gotten their hands on them. They just haven't sealed the deal yet, which means that they're probably coming sooner rather than later. And he's also recovered a fumble. HaHa has been quite the player this season for the Bears. I think it's just a matter of him being in a simplified scheme, which is something that I talked about before the season that I was looking forward to with him, and that he would be able to come under Pagano, whose coaching I gave a grade of a B, because I think he's seamlessly left himself in came into Vic Fangio's position, where these guys are flying, they're not thinking, they're reacting fast, they're getting to the ball, and they're separating the players, the opposing team from the ball. It's almost, though, why I gave him a B is because he's done a little bit too good of an impression of Vic. And we've seen those moments where the quick passing game gets those cornerbacks, the corners off the receivers, and now they're doing it to death, and they're just dinking and dunking the Bears all the way down the field. Sometimes it seems, though, maybe it's because he's hesitant to get the guys on the corners beat by these, but the blitzes that we were expecting to see, I want to see them a little bit sooner so that they're not driving down the field, and then you're having to do so in the red zone. Now, I get he doesn't want to give up the big play. He's trying to make sure that they have to maintain their integrity, the opposing offense, the entire length of the field. But you see it sometimes where like it just you have those flashbacks to the Miami game, to the New England Patriots, to the Giants games from 2018, where it's just they're dinking and dunking and the defense can't get off the field. Now, part of the reason why the defense can't get off the field is because they're constantly on the field. That is what I covered in part 2 of the Breaking Down the Bears. Again, for Last Word on Pro Football, please read, check it out, like, share, all those things. Starting there with the offensive line, a D-. This group has been terrible. Now, I just want to read you again. Pro Football Focus is not the end all be all. Again, I want to stress that, but it is a very relatable metric in telling you the performance of each player on a standardized metric. The highest is Cody Whitehair, graded out at 67.7. Bobby Massey and James Daniels followed that with 61.3 and a 61.2 respectively, both below average. And then bringing up the rear, Charles Leno and Kyle Long. Leno has a 50.4 and Kyle Long is a 37.5. Now, the offensive line is 26th in DVOA according to Football Outsiders. They are 19th in pass protection and 25th in run blocking. The payment for this group, though, Charles Leno is the $37 million left tackle who will be here through 2022 at least. Ranks 9th amongst tackles in pass block win rate. Excuse me. That is a mouthful to say. But he can't run block. And then Bobby Massey is 57th in pass block win rate, but he's getting paid as the ninth highest contractor run amongst right tackles in total value. Told you it's late. Words are going all together at this point. Daniels and Whitehair, the switch in the middle, switching back for Daniels to his natural position, but it's been a struggle for both of them. I don't know if it's a communication issue, if it's just a feel thing at this point for Whitehair or whatever the case may be, but there's been some major blunders from the interior on that spot. And then Kyle Long, there might need to be some serious talks about Kyle Long having a seat. He hasn't looked like himself. That's to be expected at this point in time. After all the injuries that he's dealt with throughout his career, but he seemed to have lacked the athleticism. He's been getting flat out beat off the snap by a defensive lineman on several occasions recently. And like I said, he looks like he doesn't have the athleticism that he needs to be successful, because he was never the biggest of guys. He was a nasty guard. He had good power. He was a strong guy, but he's not the biggest guy. And I think that without some of that athleticism, it's almost like a Kyle Turley, where when he lost some of that mobility, you just saw him kind of not be as effective as he once was. And that could be an issue that maybe they are addressing right now. Who knows? But that's something that I think will need to be kept an eye on going forward, because they got to figure it out. That's the other thing. That's not the other thing. That's the thing. They have to figure out something along the offensive line, because it starts there. The issues that we see from the rest of the offense are, at least in a large part, attributable to how poor the offensive line has been performing. But the other pieces have not done well either. Running backs graded out as a D. The three-headed monster that we were sold on, David Montgomery, Mike Davis, in order, Mike Davis, David Montgomery, and Tariq Cohen, have not materialized into much more than David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen after the first game, where it seemed like they were trying to split up Montgomery and Davis for some reason. We've then seen Montgomery take over the snaps, but Davis has faded into anonymity. Now, I don't think anybody was necessarily stumping for that per se, that they get rid of Davis altogether from the game plan. I think that he's a very useful back, and that his versatility kind of keeps the defense guessing, which is something that this offense gets used more of. But they seem to just feel like, okay, well, we have our workhorse in David Montgomery. They're trying to let him figure it out. That's fine, but the problem is that he has this trio has 284 combined rushing yards through 5 games. The guy that they are replacing as a unit, who are they supposed to be getting, supposed to be supplementing, Jordan Howard with the Philadelphia Eagles, has 248 yards by himself. The group has 95 carries. Howard has 53 carries for Philadelphia. The David Montgomery is 18th in carries, but 29th in yards, and he's He's ranked 39th in yards per carry right now. This is not going well. He's at 225 yards in the season. They have seemed to fall into a habit of making him and Tariq Cohen have specialized roles. Now, Montgomery catches passes and Cohen still gets carries, but they're not he's only got 17. Cohen does 17 carries for 37 yards in the season. He's got 31 targets for 20 catches, 128 yards and a touchdown. Now, a lot of that came when he filled in for Anthony Miller, played mostly in the slot, but that's where their predictability is based off of. They're trotting out one of these two guys, and the defense can not necessarily lay off one of their assignments in pass coverage or run whatever. Run defense, but they can kind of lean towards one or the other, because if Montgomery's back there, chances are if he's getting the ball, they're going to be running the ball. If Cohen's back there, it's probably going to be a pass. That's a tell. That's something that I'm sure Nagy during his self-scouting during this bye week is going to notice, and it's something that's going to address. The offensive line, like I said in the article, could do better, but he needs to do Montgomery. Needs to do a better job of attacking holes and not dancing. He's got a very Le'Veon Bell-esque style. And while I do admit that the line needs to do better, I think that in this instance, while he prefers to run with a more patient style, he should hit the hole, because he can see that clearly they're not going to be able to sustain blocks for very long. If there's any holes opening up, they're closing within an instant. So he probably should get downhill rather than dancing around and waiting for something more to open up. They don't have the power to do that. They're a pass blocking unit, and it shows, even though they're not doing that too well either this season. I think that he can help his own cause by getting more downhill. And again, like I said, they need to diversify how they're using these two. Get them on the field together, whatever the case may be, but you need to use them both effectively, or convert Cohen to a full-time receiver and just utilize him as a weapon. I think he's a large part of what's missing in this game plan, which is funny because they try to get him the ball a lot, but I think teams are keying on him, and if they can find a way to get him going, that would open up a lot of things for the rest of the offense and take off a lot of the pressure that they're having. The pass catchers, other than Cohen, I gave a D+, and that's great. That grade is really boosted by Allen Robinson, his 43 targets, 31 receptions, 377 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's on pace for 120 yards, 93 grabs, and 1,100 yards. Overall, those things. He's 12th in targets, but only 16th in yards, and that's because of what's going on with the quarterback situation. According to No Checkdowns, he has 9.5% created receptions. That's the highest among receivers with at least 20 targets. And the supporting cast is not really doing much for him. Taylor Gabriel and Anthony Miller both had rough starts. Gabriel had that big game against Washington, but he ended up getting hurt in that game and has been out the 2 games since then. So that's been a major blow to the offense. And Anthony Miller just can't seem to find his way. He's had to create some catches as well, but it just seems like he's not really on the same page, and he's seemed to have lost either confidence in himself, confidence that the quarterback's going to find him in the offense, or the coaches have lost confidence in him, or something else is going on, but it's just not looking anywhere like the player who scored 7 touchdowns last season. So it's kind of surprising there. And then the tight end position has been just brutal for this team. Trey Burton signed that big contract before last year, hasn't caught 5. He's only caught 5 or more passes 3 times, and he's only gone for 40 plus yards 4 times since he signed with the Bears. And then Adam Shaheen has just done nothing of note since the Bears drafted him late a couple years ago. It's rough. Like I said, outside of Robinson, who was the only one who qualified for the defensive yards above replacement, where he ranked 6th, the only other person who qualified for anything among pass catchers was Burton, who ranked 39th of 41 pass catching, or 39th of 41 tight ends. So they gotta the other guys have to step up. Obviously, Gabriel being hurt is not helping anybody. When they went to him and made him the primary option, that offense looked different. It looked like it worked because they weren't tunnel vision on Allen Robinson, and they got somebody else involved. Now, Javon Wims was like a good target. Maybe Mitch could use him. That thought has been bandied out about a lot lately, that they could get Wims out there and have 2 big targets for Mitch so that his accuracy doesn't have to be his pinpoint. Something similar to what Carolina tried to do with Cam Newton a couple of years ago down there with Funchess and Telvin Benjamin before that whole thing blew up on everybody involved. Then the quarterback position, that's an F. And it hurt to give it that because it feels like it should be incomplete. But I feel like what we've seen thus far lets everybody know that whatever it is, it's not ready. We're not right, and they got to fix it. I don't know if it can be fixed, but if it can, they need to do it ASAP because the division is much tougher this year. Teams are healthy. We're not. weird. They're not, and they need to make sure that they get this offense on track, because this defense balls. This defense is Super Bowl ready, but the offense has looked worse than it looked last year. Now, could it be that they are not catching anybody off guard, or is it that they can't open it up the way they want to because they can't sustain anything, because they can't block anything? We'll have to wait and see what the rest of the season holds, obviously. But I think early on, you have to kind of lean towards it. Okay, well, if they can figure out and shore up the blocking up front, they will have better holes to run, and that would open up the passing game for Mitch. They could also stand to throw some more play action passes, but we'll get to that another time. Dissect that one next episode on Tuesday. The coaching was a C-. Oh, going back to Mitch, I'm sorry I didn't even break down Mitch's stats, how awful it's been for him. Let's go through this. Mitch is 34th in attempts and completions per game, 36 in passing yards per game. He's 18th in completion percentage, but his 5.5 yards per attempt are 34th. He is 26th in defensive DYAR and DVOA, and 31st in total QBR. He is 8th in receiver error percentage, but he's also 10th in interceptable pass percentage and 29th in depth-adjusted accuracy. He's struggling to find receivers consistently. Like I told you, Miller and Robinson are among the highest created reception percentages in the league, and Miller doesn't even have that many catches. That lets you know how tough it is going on. Trubisky's having issues finding anybody with access, hitting guys in stride so they can run after the catch, and the big plays just haven't been there with any sort of consistency. And what's worse is we saw Chase Daniel go out there and operate the offense mostly at a high level. Now, what we also saw from Chase Daniel was that the reasons why he's a backup and why he's been a backup for the vast majority of his career, as he basically began and ended that Raiders game with an interception. So he's not the answer either, and they're going to have to figure out, this season is going to be the make or break, which is what I said before it began. This is going to tell whether or not they're ready, or if the trade for Khalil Mack was ultimately a bad move because it pushed that timeline and it brought the spotlight when they were really uncertain at a very key position, that position being the most important one, the quarterback position. We're going to switch gears when we come back, talk a little bit NBA, some interesting things going on, the Daryl Morey stuff, some preseason hype, and some more interesting things to talk about. Don't go anywhere. 000. Be right back in a moment. I keep doing that. Welcome back, 000. Switching over to the NBA, talking a little bit of NBA preseason hype action. I just love how everything about the NBA is so much more hype. You had the Lakers putting everybody on notice after their first win. You had the James Harden Houston Rockets out there. James Harden out there for the Houston Rockets showing off his one-legged three-point shot. Houston Rockets in the news for other reasons. Zion Williamson out here showing off in preseason. The local Chicago Bulls. See Red Nation looking good, looking bad, just giving you a little bit of both, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And during their preseason games, they actually just got blown out by the Pacers recently, the other night. So whatever, but it's still, like I said, man, I've been on this train for a few days now, a few episodes now. NBA preseason is so much better than the NFL preseason. You get no star power, no major names playing in the NFL, at least this year. In the NBA, you've seen guys, like I said, you had Harden out here pulling out new moves. You had the Lakers putting the league on notice. It's just a great thing to see. But that brings me to the next thing. The non-playoff teams, the teams that I don't expect to make the playoffs in the NBA, and who I'll still be watching because of the interesting players that they have, personnel. The first one being the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis, seeing how they can play together healthy for an entire season. Hopefully, the Mavs re-signed Kristaps with the trading for him. Sat out the whole last year with the ACL. He's had a lot of injuries. Hopefully, he can remain healthy and out of trouble. And they can have something going on there. I would like to see them get Vucevic too, just to see that have Cuban fulfill that Euro dream that he seemed to have when creating this group right now. That's preternatural passing from both of them. Great defense from Kristaps, a great offensive weapon in Luka, and a floor general type player. That team, they're missing a lot around those two, but I think that they'll be a fun duo to watch and watch them grow together on the floor. The next group is right here: LaVine, Lowry, Zach LaVine, and Lauri Markkanen. The ceiling for these two is hard for me to peg because I watch them a lot, and I'm still not sure what this team is. They haven't played a lot together, so whenever you see them, you're kind of just watching all the pieces, but you don't get to see the sum of the parts. And what I wrote for Pippen Ain't Easy is that this preseason has showed us a little bit of everything. You've gotten a glimpse of what their ceiling could be, but you've also seen the negatives come out with regularity, more regular than I wanted to admit to, because I think that they could get out of the gates to a strong start. I think that they could get to the first 24 games, which is a select region. If you know what that 24 games is, then that's the Fred Hoiberg term when he got fired last year. He went 5-19 to start the season. I think they can get to that at or slightly above 500, but they have to play better defense than we've seen now. Granted, they did that against the Pelicans for the first 3 quarters until the starters sat, and they'd only played prior to the Pacers game. They'd only played about 1.7 minutes in the fourth quarter. So let's slow the roll there. They struggled with the Bucks in the first game, the 3-point shooting of the Milwaukee Bucks, but that's the team that many expect to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I picked them to be there against the Philadelphia 76ers, who I think will win it, but that's a whole other topic for another time. But the Bulls, Lowry and Zach LaVine, we saw a stretch where Zach began the season on fire because he was doing all the heavy lifting. He's a walking bucket. He's been incredibly efficient this preseason. Hopefully he can keep that up. Want to see Lowry get his numbers back up. His shots have been slightly down, but his threes have gone up, and we've seen the Bulls pick up their pace. I think that's what makes this team, this group, this duo one to watch, is because we get to see maybe more of what they can be if they can remain healthy. The team's already dealing with injuries with Wendell Carter, but they've got everybody else going. More depth pushes guys into their proper roles coming off the bench. Maybe this team can do something. I think that they should be able to challenge for a playoff spot. I was talking sixth seed with optimism. I'm thinking 8th seed, like that's probably their ceiling right now, judging by some of the defense we saw. Again, preseason, so it's hard to put too much stock in it. I just like the cohesiveness that I've seen from them. There's still a little bit of issue with Chris Dunn, or not an issue, but the quandary with Chris Dunn. Do you keep him or do you move him? Is the defense worth having around? Do you move him? What's the offer? What's the minimum you'll accept for him in a deal? If he's happy, then he stays because he can contribute. But they're I want to see them do well. But if they don't rotate out on the 3-point line, an issue we saw with them against the Pelicans, granted it was some of the backups, but you still want to see it. Like I said, the health of Wendell Carter. I just want to see this team make it through. If they're going to do so, they're going to have to make sure that they can get out on some of these shooters on these closeouts. They're going to have scoring droughts, but can they find a way to get the game back in their favor, the momentum back in their favor when things are down? It's going to be a lot of Zach with the ball in his hands. That was one of the other things I noticed with Kobe White. He is going to be off the ball more. He's going to be a scoring threat more than he is going to be a distributor. So he'll probably always have one of the other 3, Zach, Chris, or Tomas with him out there. You know what? Even if he's with Denzel on the floor, he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands. So that's part of the value and the beauty of it. But he looked very point guard like, which may not be a bad thing. Like I said, I expect Zach and Lowry to have the ball in that order, 1 and 2 throughout the season, majority of the time. So maybe that's why you see Kobe out here looking for a shot mostly. Another last duo that I'm really looking forward to watching is Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. down in Memphis. Just a young team, fun to watch. Ja was a point guard that obviously I wanted the Bulls to get if they got lucky in the NBA draft. That did not happen, but and Jaren Jackson is a player out of Michigan State that I slept on coming out, and then saw him show the freak of nature that he really is. He can do everything on the floor. I'm interested to see if he ends up ultimately at the center position. They have Jonas Valanciunas down there right now, and Jackson playing the 4. But those two, that's a hell of a pair of bookends to have on your young squad, with some interesting pieces. They got my boy Josh Jackson, who hopefully he can stay out of trouble and find his way in the league. I'm really rooting for him. That's the last duo that I want to see do some good. There's probably some more out there that I can think of, but those are the top 3: Luka and KP, Levine, Lowry, and John and Jaren Jackson Jr. And lastly, in the NBA, the Daryl Morey tweet, more fallout. You have people, Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich, taking flack from everybody, criticizing them for not speaking out now when they were speaking out before. The NBA is taking a lot of heat. Politicians are getting involved in this thing. It's really crazy, man, because it's crazy. It's really crazy because Morey hasn't really had to say much of anything. He almost lost his job for it. So I'm not saying he hasn't had to pay some kind of a toll, but it's shifted to Kerr and Greg Popovich. This is wild. It's a wild time because when you see that you had fans get thrown out of a game with the signs, the Stand With Korea signs. They got escorted out, signs taken away, and escorted out of the property, off the premises. NBA games aren't being advertised, aren't being marketed over in China right now. They're playing right now. The Nets and the Lakers are, and they just have no press conferences, nothing like that. They taking marketing signs down off of buildings and things, and off of a simple tweet. All off of a simple tweet. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen. I'm not sure how to really process it other than to say that Morey has free speech, man. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen. We clearly know this is not a surprise to anyone who's been following the situation with Colin Kaepernick in the NFL. These organizations, these major conglomerates like the NBA and the NFL are about the money first. They're about that above and beyond. And China's a very large market, the largest market for the NBA outside of the US. So they're not going to let that dollar amount suffer on the tweet of the everybody, the group. That's when they find that the group is that's when we see them say that the group is greater than the individual when their pocketbooks are affected. So it's just a story to keep an eye on. Like I said, I've been saying that for a couple episodes too now, that this is one to keep an eye on and see how it develops going on down the road. But I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. A simple tweet has sparked so much controversy in the game of basketball where you've got they had fans, they were giving fans Chinese flags to wave inside the games that were being played there instead of America. It's a wild time. The words to describe it are hard because, again, I haven't seen anything like it. So it's really hard to really explain what's going on. Before I get out of here, man, I just want to tell everybody, share some footage that's disturbing and send some prayers out to welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. We talked about his fight. Had my guy, Tony Lopez, talk about the fight, pre-fight. Spence Jr. was involved in a car crash, and there's some footage of what happened, him in his expensive car driving fast, and here's what happened. Spence is said to be in critical condition, but expected to live. It's terrifying. That's a movie setup type of flip there. And so the fact that he's expected to live is great. Hopefully he can survive. He just had the major win over Sean Porter a couple weeks ago. Prayers sent to him and his family right now in this very terrifying, I'm sure, terrifying time. That's going to do it. Thank you for being up with me, for dealing with me in this very, very, very late edition of Triple Zeros. I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Please like, share, comment, review, all those things. Until the next time, Tuesday night, Triple Zeros. I'm out. Peace.